Hey guys, welcome to today's episode. Before we get started, we just wanted a quick update of this is the last time we're going to be in this podcast area.
You will never have to cut me out of this black wall, and I'm wearing a black shirt and I'm a floating head
And it's just
again.
a floating head. I have to be like, Irene, I have to bring up the shadows so much to make sure that your body exists. Anyways, we're done with this space, so there will be a transition period where we might do some video chats between Irene and I. We have guests lined up where we do video chats with them, but we're currently setting up our next podcast area. So hope you enjoyed today's episode and have a happy new year.
Happy New Year.
Goodbye.
Welcome to Under the Sun podcast. I'm Ilea.
And I'm Irene. Grab a cup of coffee and your comfiest sweats and join us every Monday as two best friends discuss everything from raising free-range gremlins to business and really everything under the sun.
Let's get started, and thanks for being here.
Welcome. Hey, we didn't even plan that. We both said welcome at the same time. Hi, Courtney. Thanks for being here. Do you want to introduce yourself, tell our listeners who you are, what you do?
Yeah, totally. Well, thank you ladies for having me. I think y'all are so entertaining, and I love when there are co-hosts to podcasts because I myself co-host with Dr. Motley, and I always think it's so fun when you have the dynamic of two people that are engaged in conversation and you guys have really good synergy. So you always make it entertaining.
Thanks.
I always learn something, but when I found your podcast, I was like, these girls are awesome. I kind of want to hang out. So here we are. We're hanging out digitally.
Road trip.
So, but maybe we'll do it one day in person. That would be really cool.
The goal. I mean, that would be awesome to come. We'll come to you because it's pretty gross here. So.
Hey, totally done. Come to the beach, bring children, animals. I'm an open, I welcome all chaos. It just adds to the flavor of life.
We did a podcast with Dwayne, the Dry Creek Wrangler YouTuber guy, and we didn't do it with him, we did it with his wife, and it was amazing. And we went out to their ranch in Wyoming, and it was we're never coming back. How do we live here? This is amazing. So
oh my gosh.
We would love to come see you and do this interview in person sometime. That'd be great. A part 2, all the listeners can ask questions. But
yes.
So how did you get into health? Who are you? What do you do? What?
That is a great question. And sometimes I just wonder how I landed here because things have just evolved so quickly, even though, I feel like I've been interested in natural health for a long time. It really kind of started when I had kids, but not to bore everybody with the full journey. The kind of the highlights is that I left my job working in medical device sales, started having kids when I was in my mid-20s, realized really fast that I had no idea what I was doing trying to raise children. I told my mom, I remember telling her, I was like, you did not prepare me for this. I have no idea what I'm doing. And the kids I had 2 kind of back to back, and they were always sick. Always. One would go down and I could just bank on 3 days later. The next one was ear infections, cold. And I just kept going to the pediatrician. I'm like, this cannot be right. I'm pretty sure children are not supposed to be sick 80% of their childhood. I don't remember that. I don't remember a lot of things as a kid, but being sick all the time was definitely not one of them. So I just started going rogue, and I'm like, I'm gonna figure this out. There's gotta be another way. And so I went down the slippery route of essential oils very quickly. And I was like, I'm a very all or nothing personality. So I'm not a one, let's just start with lavender. It was I had 80 oils, and I was oiling everything. And I had one course on oils, and believe it or not, was actually Dr. Axe's course, who I now actually work for. And so it's just kind of crazy because that was 10 years ago. Right. And so that just really it kind of spurred this interest. And I had an insatiable appetite for remedies. I wanted to find a remedy for everything. I felt like anything I came up against in my household for myself or my kids, I was like, I could figure this out. There's got to be another way. And so it kind of, I just, as I naturally really became obsessed with the topic of natural health, I talked about it to everybody, including my family and my friends. And I quickly just started building a business, and I started helping people. They were like, I don't know how to grocery shop. I don't know what foods to eat. I feel terrible. I can't lose weight. And all my friends were having kids too. So you got to think everybody's in that postpartum. They're depleted. They're stressed out. Their hair's falling out. Their hormones are a wreck. And they were just desperate for solutions. And so it kind of sparked this idea that, hey, maybe I'll make it a business. And so I started a health coaching practice, took a few health coaching courses, several years after, doing that. And I was raising kids, staying at home too, which was great because I could make my own schedule. I landed in a leadership mastermind with Dr. Axe, and I was like, hey, my business is doing great, but I really want to take it to the next level. And so he helped me with kind of some systems and processes that helped me scale that practice. And then about 8 months later, I ended up, getting an opportunity to work with him full time at the Health Institute. So I do that, and I co-host his podcast, the Ancient Health Podcast, with Dr. Chris Motley, and I do content for them. And so most of my time is spent interacting with some of our students that participate in a health coaching course, and also obviously podcasting and doing things through social channels. So that's kind of where I am right now.
That's awesome. That's really incredible. Like, we're honored that you're here because we have followed Josh Axe for a long time. Like, a long time. It has been probably, I mean, would you say this, Irene? Like, it's been pivotal for me, like the things I've learned from his podcast. And then when you and Dr. Motley were included, like, it's just, what an incredible resource you guys are.
He was probably my turning point for changing into semi-crunchy.
Yeah, I think for a lot of us, it was kind of like draxe.com was the only place I could find actual articles and information because Google buries everything. But he had such good SEO, like it always came up, draxe.com. And there was an article on everything. So no matter what you were looking for.
It's so well laid out with like the pretty graphics. It's like there's all of the meat that you need. And then there's just a pretty graphic if you don't have time and you just have to scroll and read the Cliff Notes.
Right, totally. That's so funny.
So we have a bunch of questions from our listeners, but also selfishly, like, I have lots of questions for you as well. And I read.
Oh my goodness, I have no idea like what the subject content is. I feel like it could be anything. Well, so hey, I'll do my best.
Like, you mentioned postpartum moms. So I'm also recently postpartum, a year and a half. I have a 1.5-year-old, which actually as I was deep diving into your Instagram, our baby girls are 1 month apart. So.
I was going to say, okay, because I almost have like a 1.5-year-old too, so they have to be close. Okay,
June 11th
that's amazing.
Is when she was born. But my question is, like, I have a bunch of moms. I'm like an older mom. I didn't have my kid till I was 30. You know, a lot of my friends had already either gone through that but they like a lot of the conversation is like, oh, like postpartum hair loss. And I was like waiting for it to happen, but I've been like a psychopath about minerals and trying to like support my body as best as I can. I mean, I'm not perfect by any means, but like I never had the postpartum hair loss. Is it normal? Are we normalizing it? Should we all be like, hey guys, red flag, what's going on here?
Yeah, so interesting you say that. I've recently just gone on, and this is just the pattern of my brain and how I operate, but I really got on looking into kind of why people experience hair loss, like in the last month.
Good.
So it's been like a personal interest. And what's interesting is like a lot of times we just think, okay, well, stress will make your hair fall out. And, or, hey, you just had a baby, so your baby just sucked up all your nutrients and now your hair's falling out. Because we know that hair is so downstream of everything else. So the body's going to prioritize everything before your hair, skin, and nails. Like, you don't need to have beautiful, long, luxurious, thick, robust hair follicles and hair on your head. You don't, but you need your heart to beat. You need blood to be pumping oxygen through your body. Like, there are vital functions that come far before the quality of your hair. So if your hair's falling out, there can be so many different reasons for that. But the main reason is that you're not getting blood flow, and blood is carrying nutrients. In Chinese medicine, like, blood is the energy and the qi. So if you're not getting blood flow to the follicles, you're not getting nutrients. And what happens are those follicles actually start to shrink. When blood flow doesn't get there, they start to shrink. So the hair cycles, the growth cycles, once the hair becomes loose, it falls out, another new hair doesn't replace it. So you end up having this shrinking, and then your hair starts to thin. So you have the shedding part, which is natural. We think like all of our hair is falling out. And sometimes that can be amplified by things like stress or parasites or other types of infections that are going on in the body. But the problem is that there's not enough blood flow. There's not enough nutrients getting there to regrow new hair. So you start shedding hair and then you don't regrow it back. And then all of a sudden your hair's like super thin. And then that adds more stress and anxiety because we're so aware of it. And like our hair, I mean, that's like something that, females, males too, males definitely for men, but like women, it's like, oh my gosh, my hair's falling out. Like that is a component quality of me that like I'm attached to, right? And it's a part of our aesthetic and our look and what makes us feel like it's us. So it's really important that that's something we preserve, but we never really talk about why that's happening. And so even stimulating blood flow by doing a lot of massage can be incredible. But I think that the biggest driver is the fact that we get stuck in this sympathetic dominant state. And so it's a nervous system problem, right? Because that's what's driving the stress. We're not getting out of a high stress situation. And that makes sense because if you just made a baby, that's like the hardest thing your body will ever do. So you are naturally depleted of nutrients. Your body just went through the hardest thing in making a human, birthing the human, and now you're depleted of sleep. And if you have other kids, I mean, it's a goat rodeo. Like you don't get to stop. Like it is, you're now nursing a newborn and you're up and down all night long. And then during the day, like you got to go. Like you're not sleeping when baby sleeps because you got a 2-year-old or 3-year-old or however, your other children are. They're running around like wild. So you got to keep up with that too. And I think that just exacerbates. And again, like this awareness of like, oh my gosh, my body is struggling just perpetuates fear, which then drives more of the symptomatology of stress. So it is kind of a feedback mechanism, but a lot of times I think we just assume, hey, let's go take a Nutrafol supplement or, some other thing. Like the nutrients are great, but if you have leaky gut and you have poor stomach acid and you can't absorb and assimilate the minerals and you don't have the blood flow necessary to get the nutrients to the follicles, like you're just spending a lot of extra unnecessary money, in my opinion.
I'm a hairstylist by trade, and that is like one of the bigger questions I've gotten, especially significantly in the last 3 years now, because the hair loss has been so high. And every time a client asks me like, what can I do for this hair loss? Can I take the Nutrafol? And I'm like, how deep do I go here? How do I not scare them away with all of my answers? Because it's not like just take the supplement. It's so loaded, but I don't think everyone's ready to hear the full answer of like, well, how's your gut?
Yeah. I think that there's so much work that has to be done when you're looking at something like your skin and your hair and your nails, because it goes beyond just, okay, let's treat the hair. Like we've got to look and treat the whole body. So I think starting with, hey, what are your patterns right now in life that could be contributing to unnecessary stress or could be driving stress? And some of us are participating in things in life that are not helping us. They're just our normal. And that's where I challenge people, hey, you've really got to take an inventory of what you're doing from sun up to sundown and who you're interacting with and the people that you're letting in your life, because those could be stressors that you do have a choice about. It's just that we've accepted that that's a part of our norm. Now, I understand if your children are screaming and crying, like you don't have a choice to be like, guys, I'm not going to parent you today. Like you need to go somewhere else because you're stressing mom out. Like that's not an option. But there are so many different scenarios where we are self-sabotaging. Like, are you scrolling social media? Are you wasting time? Are you distracting yourself with things that are coping mechanisms that are numbing you out from things that are real pain in your life? Because those are the things that you really got to get to. Stewarding pain will always lead to a poor outcome for your health. And unfortunately, so many of us have gotten caught in patterns of our life that are cyclical in just managing pain. Right? So we end up with this threshold that is so diminished. If you think of yourself as having a battery and it's at 100%, we end up chipping away one life experience at a time, one emotional trauma at a time, one breakup at a time, one disappointment. We start getting all the way down. And now maybe our baseline's 30%, but that's all we know how to operate from. We never try to refill the battery because we think 30% is maximum. And unfortunately, you can't get to healing at 30%. Like you need more margin there. So you've got to always assess, in my opinion, if you're going to take the most holistic approach to your health and you really want better hair, you got to look at a much bigger picture than your hair. Your hair is going to get better when you take care of all the other things that are in the picture. Because I promise you, just going after the hair isn't going to fix the hair. Like there are certain things that you can do, I think, that will improve the hair. But if you if you have hair thinning, hair shedding, if you have all issues with your hair, I would hedge my bets you've got bigger issues, like bigger fish to fry. You probably have some thyroid insufficiencies. You've got some leaky gut. You may have autoimmune stuff going on. Like there are bigger things going on. So you've got to be able to look at a little bit more than that because none of us just want, the thing is we want to fix the superficial, right? Like that is natural. I'm like, I can tolerate some of the things that people can't see. But the things people can see, I really want to fix because that's the stuff I see looking back at me in the mirror. That's the stuff that I'm insecure about. That's the stuff that makes me feel like, oh, I'm not going to put that on social media. So those are the things that we naturally gravitate towards, but you've got to do some deeper work. And I know it's hard. It's supposed to be hard, right? Like we make it look easy because everybody's highlight reels on social media all the time, but that's really not life. You know, life is really doing the hard work. And once you do and lay the groundwork, you start to see the benefit of that. Now, all that to say, because I realize that people listening might be like, that's great, woman, whoever you are that's getting all preachy with me, but I just need to know how to fix my hair.
Yes.
And I'm all about practical stuff because I don't have time to mess around either. Like we all have a million responsibilities and hats to wear. And the older I get and the more I really seek wisdom in my life, I really do believe that wasting time is the greatest threat. Like we are masters at being time wasters. I look at myself and I didn't even really do this like as a personal assessment. So I am not yelling at anybody else. This has been a frustration of my own after doing some real inner work of just evaluating my own habits. And I realized that I do a lot of things that just waste time. And I do it because it makes me feel good. Like sometimes just scrolling social media is like mind numbing. And I just, I'm like, sometimes I see some lady shutting the trunk of her car with her head because she has groceries in her hands. Like I reposted that reel yesterday. I'm like, it's so stupid.
So
but
funny.
I was like, it was funny. But then again, so anyway, I'm not saying you can never laugh or have any fun. Like, listen, we're here to enjoy our lives too. I fully believe that. But I think that when we're looking at our health, you've got to be able to look at your day-to-day choices and you've got to be able to see how it's contributing to the overall impact of your health today. Because whatever you have chosen up until this point has created the reality that you're experiencing right now. So for your hair specifically, okay, here it is. Blood flow is number one. Stimulating blood flow, you could use a hairbrush, you could use your fingernails. I do this all the time. And I even got a little thing off Amazon. So I know I'm jumping around, but I'm going to give you guys a couple tangibles because I know all the people that want to just know about hair are like, I just need a little bit on a silver platter and I'll do the hard work later. That's how I think sometimes.
Yeah.
So stimulating blood flow is so important. And you could do that, like I said, you can do it with a comb. I have like a little wooden comb I got on Amazon. It's great. But you've got to be able to get blood flow. It feels really good. It feels like a scalp massage. The other thing you can do is get some antioxidants into your scalp. I actually really like C60, carbon 60. This is a different form and matrix of an antioxidant, and it's incredibly powerful. You can get it. It's going to make your hair greasy. So this is like one of those things you don't want to do the day you wash your hair, because then you're going to look like you have greasy hair until you wash it. But you can get carbon 60, C60, and actually massage that into the scalp. Getting those antioxidants in, right? Oxidative stress to cells, that's death, that's cell death, that's disease cells. Those are not going to proliferate into good, healthy new tissue and new growth. So getting the antioxidants into the skin can actually be helpful. The other little thing that I have found, and now I'm not the expert on this because I've only been playing around with this for a few weeks, is copper peptide. And I have recently gotten into peptides, like in the last 8 months. Now, copper peptide you can use topically. The other peptides, you've got to use an insulin needle and you have to do them subcutaneously. And so you're injecting them into your fat. But copper peptide you can actually put into the skin. And it gets absorbed really well, especially with the carbon 60, because carbon 60 will a lot of times be emulsified in a fat. So you'll find it with like an avocado oil or coconut oil. That's why it's got the greasy nature to it. But that's actually going to drive the copper into the skin. And that has shown dramatic improvement in hair growth. And again, doing that, coupling it with the massage, and then also red light therapy. So if you can hit your scalp with red light for like 5 minutes, like if you can get one of those little handhelds, I have a Loom box and you can just like, they can make like caps. They do all this kind of crazy fancy stuff. I don't have any of that. But if you have a red light, which I think everybody can benefit from having that, any type of injury or anything that you have that's like skin abrasions or whatever, it's so good. Or inflammation, like a localized inflammatory area, hit it with red light. It's incredible for healing. But that's going to stimulate, again, more blood flow and more tissue regrowth and repair. So it's all that collagen, everything in the skin that's been broken down. You're basically stimulating and creating an effect where you want to promote growth. So for all of the people that just need a couple little things that they can work on, that's them. Now, the other side of that is what's the other work that you have to do? And ultimately, beyond some of the emotional work, I think that you've got to look at your gut. You got to look at what you're consuming day to day. You've got to look at other environmental factors because toxins are huge. Like toxins are just going to destroy your mitochondria. That's what creates energy. If you have decreased energy output in your body, then you're not going to be able to do a lot of things like have good thyroid hormone or be able to create collagen. Like that is the motor behind everything. So if that motor's running slow, then you're not going to be producing a lot of new hair. So making sure that your toxin exposures are not a threat. And they are a threat to everybody. But again, like, what are you buying? Are you using your microwave? Are you storing things in plastic? Don't do that. Like, those are things that you just, I know they're convenient. And sometimes you may not have a choice, and that's fine. But the things that you can control in your home, that's the area that I feel like people really just have to double down and realize, like, you can't take shortcuts anymore. Like there's too much. There's too many pesticides, insecticides, aluminum in the air. Like there's just things everywhere. We're getting it from every angle, but you've got to be able to limit what you can control. And that will have downstream effects for how your body feels and functions in the future. And it's directly correlated to your longevity. So it's so important that you do the work now before you end up in a place where you're facing disease, you're facing a lot of symptoms, and you are at that decreased threshold and capacity. The more you can improve your body's resilience and adaptability to stress, the better your likelihood is of living long, healthy years disease-free.
Preach, girl.
Yeah.
Where's your Bible? Like, I love it.
I know. Honestly, I've been on a kick lately. It's been.
Do you have acne? Do you have irritable bowel? Do you have terrible menstrual cramps? Well, all of those things could be connected to parasites. A lot of illnesses are actually connected to parasites. So that's why you should probably parasite, get those parasites out of you at least 3 to 4 times a year. And if you're hearing this, maybe you've actually never done a parasite cleanse and you need to make up for lost times. So we have a way to help you.
Head over to rogershood.com and use the code UTSP10 for 10% off of your Parafy kit. This will help you get all those worms out of your body so you can just be a much better person.
You'll be happier. You'll be healthier. We do get a little kickback from it because we need to keep the lights on in the studio. So
that is true.
Go get them worms out your butt.
And maybe send us pictures.
In Chinese medicine, we talk about how winter is the season where you're really supposed to reflect, slow down, and really just take time to be like, where am I and where am I going? Because a lot of times we don't do that. In fact, December for most people is the craziest month ever because everybody's just, it's like, oh, maybe I'll slow down in the new year. But then we hit January 1 and everybody's like, we need to come out of the gate strong. I'm going to be at the gym and I'm going to make all my food. And we've never stopped. And people are going to be in the exact same place this time next year saying 2025 is my year. We're in 2023 right now, but we are not far from 2024. And I'm telling you, if you do not change the patterns of your life now, then you will be in the same position 1 year from now. Your patterns are going to predict where you are going. But if you never assess the pattern, then you will never have a different outcome.
That's what's hard though, is doing the actual work and looking at you and being like, oh, it's me. I'm the problem. It's my habits. It's my decisions on what I'm welcoming into my home, bringing into my home, or, the doom scrolling on Instagram. I have that issue. I'm I've been really busy all day. I get a little treat of, scrolling for a half hour before I go to bed or whatever. But it's the hard look at yourself to be unless I want change, I have to make the hard decisions then. I have to, nobody's coming to tell me, we just did this on a podcast last week or 2 weeks ago, and it was nobody's coming to slap the phone out of your hand. No one's coming to slap the Oreos out of your mouth. Nobody's gonna do it for you. We have to do the hard things for generations to come and for ourselves. We deserve better. Do you know the comedian John Mulaney? I don't listen to him anymore, but do you know John Mulaney?
I don't know. I feel like his name is familiar.
He's in prison now, I think. But
I'm terrible with names.
Is he?
Gosh.
Yeah. Okay, so all right. It's a whole thing. I'm pretty sure he's in prison right now. Don't quote me on that. But he has a joke in his I think Netflix special or something, YouTube special from years and years ago. And he's like, before I had a girlfriend, I had no standards for how I should be treated. She's like, the bus driver shouldn't talk to you like that, or your food was supposed to be here a half hour ago. But sometimes we even need, even if it's podcasters, people who are listening to us saying hey, no, you deserve to not feel like trash all the time or have like your nervous system be out of whack for the rest of your life. Like you deserve to try to make yourself thrive. Like just what are some incremental, like how do you support yourself? Like you're a mom, you have 3 kids. How do you do this? How do you balance it? I have 1 and I'm like, whoa, I might be a specialty shop. There might just be 1 kid coming out of me. Like, I don't know. But like Irene has 2, you have 3. How do help us? How do we do this?
Well, like I said earlier, when I first started having kids, and I yelled at my mom and I was like, you did not prepare me for this. And I'm one of 4, so I have several siblings too and come from a bigger family. But, I got to be honest, I truly, in the last year, I've probably grown more as a person in the last 8 to 12 months than my entire adult life, like combined. And a lot of that is because I've had to face some things that are very hard. And you have 2 choices, right? Like you can victimize yourself. You can look at your circumstances and say, my circumstances are crap. Nobody else has to deal with this. This is not what I signed up for. And I'm going to be upset about it. Or you can find peace and you can find joy. Joy is different from happiness. Happiness comes from your circumstances driving the emotion. Joy is something that you have because you serve something much greater than yourself and there is purpose on your life. And so I connected with the purpose on my life because I knew who created me. And that has been by far the biggest game changer because I show up differently now than I did even 6 months ago. Like I show up with a different level of intentionality with everything I do. And I am not telling you guys that I get it right. Like, please know deep down, I still yell at my kids. And sometimes like I just want to eat like an entire bar of chocolate and sit in my closet and cry. And I do that. Sometimes I just do that.
We all
However,
do that.
I don't.
We can all be honest.
Yeah, everybody does. And I don't deny the humanity of, hey, when hard things get really hard, you just break. However, I know where to go when I break. I know I bring my pieces to the cross. And that's where I allow God to just intervene and stand in the gap for me. And I know that he says, cling to me, abide in me. You do not need to weather the storm. Like you don't need to fight the battle, but you need to trust me. And I have gotten to a place in my faith where I just believe that what I'm going through right now, this wilderness I feel like I am navigating, it is training ground, and it is so important that I don't miss what God has for me in this season. And I think when you start to value what God is leading you through, and whether you have faith or you don't, if you here's the thing, like we all have one life and we've got one clock we're working with. And if you don't believe that there is a greater entity, a greater deity in your life that has created everything and created you with purpose, then it could be very easy to lose hope. It could be very easy to be discouraged. But when you get connected to the fact that you are seen and everything is serving a purpose, you start stewarding it a little bit well. Like you start stewarding it a little bit better. And I think that walking through pain while you're carrying a million things and you've got all these plates that are spinning at the same time, if you can steward that pain well, then you will be serving a purpose that is so much greater than you could have ever imagined on your life. But you have to realize there is so much significance. And right now I am in a period where I can say, like, I know what it's like to feel like you are in the trenches. Like it is hard. It is very hard. I'm not going to discredit that. So if any of you are listening and you are in a season where you're like, I'm tired. I feel like my health is not great. I feel like people are disappointed in me. I'm not sure where, I'm headed in my career or relationships. And you just feel like maybe you don't have a handle on anything. If you get connected to the fact that where you are right now is so important, like everything up until this point has served a purpose for you to be in this position, to be listening to this podcast at this point in time, because it is meant to serve something that you are to carry in the future. It is meant to refine you so that you can carry the blessing of the future. And that is where it changes your perspective. Because I'm like, listen, that load is heavy. It's not mine to carry. But 2, like God must be doing something really significant. And the greatest thing I could do that would damage this season of my life is to mismanage it. Is to think it's just pain. I need to grit and bear it and wait till I get to the other side so I can start enjoying my life again. because I know after 2023, I sure as heck don't want to be the same person I was that started 2023. Like, I've been in the fire. I better be coming out so purified and refined and so incapable of foolishness that I do nothing but the will of the Lord in everything that I do, and that there is blessing and abundance and overflow in everything I set my mind to. So if you're listening to that, please just know, like, from my heart, I see you. Like, I know what it is like to feel discouraged and tired and overwhelmed. But if you really do believe that you were designed and created for such a time as this, like that, you should feel so valued, and that honestly, like, to me, that's where the pride of just, you know what? I get to carry this. It's not a burden. It might be hard, but it's not my burden. Like, this is what I was designed to carry. Nobody else could handle this, but I have been through certain experiences, and I was brought to this place so that I could be the one to carry this assignment out. And so I think that that's just the mindset, honestly. I think that you can overcome a lot if you have the right mindset.
I think a lot about Job. God offered Job up as, like, have you considered my servant Job to the serpent? Like, he's like, here, have you considered him my faithful servant? Why don't you, like, try? And Job lost all of his kids. His wife said, you might as well just curse God and die. And instead, he, like, when he was in immense grief, he tore his garment, he shaved his head, I think, and then fell and worshiped. Faith and discouragement, like, can go hand in hand. You can be in immense grief and still have, like, a worshiping heart. And that was like, I was like, oh, because, perkiness isn't a fruit of the spirit. Like, being like, oh, like, everything is good, because we grew up, Irene and I, in, like, the Baptist world where, like, you do not admit that you have problems, because if you admit you have problems and that you're struggling in life, that, like, then you're not close enough to God. Like, and that's just not biblically defensible, because God literally offered up his servant Job and said, like, no, like, please, like, I am putting my faithful servant in this trial, like, on purpose to refine him for God's glory. And so that shifted, that was like a click in my brain of, oh, maybe, like, the struggle that we're going through, like what you said, is refining for a bigger and greater purpose that's actually going to make me better, which, we're all like 30 plus, and we can see that, like, oh yeah, like those things that happened in my past, like, thank God I went through that, because then that taught me this, or then, like, their true character was revealed. How do you think that connects to then, like, health? Because, a lot of people think, like, everything is separate, but it's really, like, mind, body, spirit. And I know, like, you and Dr. Motley talk about that a lot, of, like, hey, like, work on emotional trauma, like, or like even little t trauma. How do you manage that? How do you, practical tips, help us?
Yeah, it is. It's all reflected, right? Like, the mind, you're always leading in the direction of your strongest thoughts, and your brain is the control. It's the command center. So if you don't believe that your body isn't taking cues from your subconscious thoughts, like, let me tell you, it is. And you can see that, because what happens when you get in a situation and you're really stressed out and people are maybe disappointing you, your kids are misbehaving, like, what is your natural response? Like, how do you react? Like, what's the programming there? Because we all handle things in the same way. When you really start to think about it, we all handle things generally the same way. So when it comes to conflict, when it comes to disappointment, we have coping mechanisms. And this is what we call self-preservation. This is what's safe. And this is how people miss it, because they get stuck in patterns that keep them sick. And it frustrates me so much because, and I've done this myself, because we default to what is familiar. Okay, familiarity does not mean that it is the best choice for your health, that it is going to promote healing. Familiarity means that's what we've clung to because it was the only survival tactic and the only tool that we had maybe 10 or 20 years ago. But it's what we kept going back to over and over and over. Every time somebody let us down, every time somebody threw us a curveball and you got blindsided, you went to the same things. Maybe it was food. Maybe it was Well, I get on social media, or maybe it's I call, my mom or my best friend or whatever, and I need to talk it out. But you do the same things. So start looking at how you're reacting in different situations. Maybe it's a positive thing. Maybe it's something great. Well, what do you do? How do you celebrate? Are those things serving the purpose of healing in your life? Or are they medicating something that's maybe underlying that you've never addressed, right? Because we all have them. We all have these things. And unfortunately, like most of us, we're so busy and we're so distracted. We don't have the emotional bandwidth to go deep. Like we don't want to. I'm telling you, when I started going to therapy and counseling, I used to have anxiety. I would want to throw up because I knew the second we started picking at a scab, it was just like the floodgates would come. I mean, and I'm like, man, I don't like that. That does not feel good. But if you want to grow, you cannot be comfortable. So you are going to have to get in there and pick at some things that you've probably tried to ignore and cover up for a long time. But if you don't get down to it, it will hold you hostage to your symptoms and to your lack of being whole. Like you will not be able to experience full healing. So when we talk about giving the body more resources to healing, you've got to slow down. Like you have to slow down. You can't just be like, well, I'll fit in an extra 5 minutes of meditation. I really hate that. Like, I love the idea of meditation. But so many people are meditating and so many people are flying off the handle the minute someone cuts them off. Like, cool. How'd that meditation work out for you an hour ago? Because you just went off the rails, like for somebody just, that's not paying attention driving. I mean, it's kind of unbelievable, right? But it's because we're never really getting down to the meat of what the substance of what it is that makes us tick. And until you can start to unpack those emotions, you can start to free the body up so that it can feel better. We know that in Chinese medicine, I know I keep saying that, but like the liver is associated with the emotion of anger. And so a lot of times when we see people that have outbursts of anger, guess what? The liver may need a little extra support and love. And so there's a very holistic way of treating the body and helping the body by doing it from a nutrient perspective, but by also addressing the emotions that are attached to it. It's like, hey, what is it that is like really setting you off? Like, what are you angry about in your life? And when people start to go there, all of a sudden it's like, wow, okay, they never really addressed it. So kidneys are associated with fear. What fears, what is like keeping people so bound up that they're just so afraid? Are they around people that they feel like they're disappointing all the time? Are they constantly afraid that they're going to fail and lose their job? Are they afraid that something's going to happen to their kids? Like all of these things are connected to our organs, guys. Everything is. So you've got to, I think that isolating and putting things in silos is such, that's really the way that we've been taught, and the way that we systematize everything and categorize it is that in Western medicine, it's like, well, you got a heart problem, you go see a cardiologist. But we're never associating the heart with grief or with other things that we're maybe experiencing. So from a holistic perspective, I think looking at your time and slowing down, like that has to be number one. You cannot fix something that you cannot evaluate. So I'm not saying go do all the labs. I think the labs are great. Go do some blood chemistry, do a GI map, maybe work with somebody. But if you do not stop, like right now, in this time of the year, like, it's cold for most people. Days are pretty short. I mean, it gets like 6 o'clock at night and I'm like, well, guess we should all go to bed because I feel like it's been dark for a while and I don't really know what to do. So I actually started. I was like, I feel like everybody winds down earlier. So instead of just putting the TV on or just distracting ourselves, just start journaling. Just sit in the quiet. I am telling you, oh my goodness. If you sit in the quiet for 20 minutes, like set a timer and just sit there, see
so
how
hard.
uncomfortable it gets.
It's so hard.
It is so hard. And it gets real scary real fast because the thoughts, I'm telling you, your brain is just spinning and things will come up that you didn't expect. And all of a sudden it'll scare you a little bit because you think, oh my gosh, why am I thinking about that? I shouldn't be thinking about that. Well, what does that make me feel? And like, it starts to stir up all kinds of things, but you've just been so distracted that a lot of times those things, even if they did cross your brain, you're in the middle of doing something else. So you just don't pay it any attention. But when you're sitting there in the quiet and those things come up and you're thinking about that person or that conversation that you had, or you're thinking like, gosh, like I just ate so much food that like I never would have eaten that if I hadn't been rushed and stressed out. Like you there's no awareness. And I think that we lack such awareness because we are so busy. And at the end of the day, we just basically run ourselves until we're empty. And then we hit the pillow and we go to bed. Maybe we take, some extra sleep aids, whatever we need to get us through the night. We can get up and get on the hamster wheel again. Is that really how you want to go through life though? Like that's how I'm at this place where I'm like, no, I want to get up and actually feel really good about what it is that I'm choosing to do with my time. I cannot get the time and the hours and the days back. I can't. And I want my life to mean something. At the end of the day, I want it to be significant. So if you're going to do that, you've got to be able to take measure of what it is that you're filling your days with. And I'm telling you, if you can do that, just take the month, take the next couple of weeks going into the new year. And instead of packing your schedule with one more thing, just commit to giving yourself 20 minutes to sit there. And I'm telling you, journal, just write down whatever comes to your mind. It could be like not even coherent, like it could be random, whatever. It will feel so awkward and unproductive the first few times you do it. So don't give up after the first few times. You're just going to feel like, I don't know, I feel like this is a waste of time. It's not. But until you really start to put some thought around what it is that you're doing and where you want to go, you'll never be able to see a different outcome. So for your health, I mean, gosh, you could take all the supplements in the world. Trust me, I've done them. I have so many supplements. I mean, it's unbelievable. That's like my retirement. So when everybody needs something, you just know where to come in Charleston because I have like, a whole thing. And I love them and they're helpful. But I'm kind of tired of the mentality of, oh, you just need vitamin D. Like, oh, I'm like, no. Like, we need to address the toxic relationships in your life before your freaking vitamin D. Like the vitamin D is not going to change your problems, but really evaluating the fact that you have all these really bad habits of getting yourself into toxic relationships, like that's going to create some real problems down the road.
I feel like there's a crossover from people that grew up kind of conventional, who it's like, well, just go to the doctor and get a pill to fix it. And then they kind of become a little bit on the more holistic side, but then they go to a practitioner. It's like, well, give me the supplement so I can fix it. There's still that like, give me this so I can fix it fastness, even though it's a better option. Maybe this is better than a synthetic thyroid hormone, but at the end of the day, it's still just give me the quick fix and not a lot of like, let's dig.
I have a lot of, just people in our life, because like we're on the more crunchy side. We don't know everything by any means. I don't think anybody does, but they'll be like, hey, like I have this thing. What do I do? Like what supplement can I take? And I'm like, well, you're drinking coffee on an empty stomach in the morning, like just eat breakfast. And then I can feel that they're like disappointed with that answer. I'm like, just eat breakfast. Like just drink some water. Just simple things like, are you drinking enough water? How's your diet? They want like the next best thing. Like they're like, I hear Rishi's really good. It's like, yeah, it's really great. But like, how are your small daily habits? Like, how are those going? And a lot of people just don't want that because it's actually much harder to be consistent every single day and be like, nope, I'm just gonna eat a balanced meal, drink water for a couple weeks and see how I feel instead of immediately jumping to a supplement. So, or.
Yeah, well, it's so much easier. Just, hey, what do I need to take? I mean, we're so spoiled because, it's Amazon. You can get same day Amazon deliveries. You can Instacart all of your groceries. Like we just want what we want right now. And we assume that because we see 1,000 other people on our social media that all look like they've got it together, that we could have it together too if we just had what they had. And that is so far from the truth. And most likely they're just as jacked up as you are. You just don't know it because you don't see it on social media. So here's the thing. Before you start subscribing to anything else, I just went through and did this. Like I just went through and I'm talking about like actual like subscriptions, right? Like go through your checking account, see how many things you subscribe to. I was subscribed to things. I'm like, I don't even know what that business is. How am I getting charged for it? Like, I don't even know. But at some point it popped up on my feed and I obviously thought it sounded good enough to hit subscribe. So you better detox your life before you add one more thing to your plate. Detox some things. Like go through everything. Go through your financials, go through your supplement cabinet, go through your refrigerator, go through your phone book on your phone, your whatever it is, like your contacts. You better start detoxing some things. I am telling you, if you can get hyper focused on the things and the people and the information that is sound wisdom in your life, you will start to see fruit come from that so much quicker than you ever could if you had every voice with every idea. The analysis paralysis is unbelievable. And this is where people just get caught in the thicket because there's so much information and there's so many products and you're being marketed for this and that. I mean, it's just like, it's unbelievable. I mean, sometimes I look at my like Instagram and I'm just like, the things I get targeted for are like, it's mind blowing, right? I mean, but here's the thing. It's done so strategically. Like all of this AI, everything that's being tracked, like, because it's trying to understand, it's trying to show you what it thinks you need to see, and it's learning your patterns. It probably knows your patterns better than you know your own, which is really scary, right? I mean, we're headed down into a time where when technology knows you better than you know yourself, we are headed for some dark times. So you have got to detox all of it. Social media, people, food, your household, all of it. Like it should be a garage sale for 2023, like yard sale, everything. Like it's got to go. If it is not serving the next version of you, it's got to go. I don't care. You don't need to make any money on it. Just get rid of it. Just know you just don't want to see it anymore. Because the more that it's there, the more it's gunking up your actual purpose and it's gunking up the capacity for you to heal. And that's the thing. If you don't create space, you're not going to be able to access it. It can't fit. There's no room for it. You only have so much room. You only have so much emotional bandwidth to give people. You only have so much energy. You only have so many hours during the day. So if you don't take ownership of it, I'm telling you, everybody else and everything else and the things on your device are going to take that time before you even get to take control of it.
Your
Sorry, I'm
passion
getting very
is like,
preachy.
I love
like
this.
giving me goosebumps. Because
Oh my
like,
gosh.
Love it.
is this I mean, we like to kind of do the more like Joe Rogan style where we just see where the conversation goes and like let it naturally organic. But like, I think that's where this happens because, you know, maybe people came to this podcast because they were like, oh yeah, we want the next supplement. Like we want to know like, what's the next thing? Red light, castor oil, what do we got to do? You know, instead it's like, okay, spiritually, like what, like, how is this going to refine you and what are you going to do about it? Like, what are you going to do about it in 2024? Like, I love that because, you know, we're in a simplifying phase right now. Like, I'm not like a minimalist by any means, but like, I'm like, okay, like we have had all this crap. We have moved it to like 4 different houses and we have not moved them from the box since the first house. Like what mental capacity is that holding up? Or like expectations of, you know, family and friends and like who people think you should be. And instead it's, you know, our mission and Irene and I's mission, like, we're simplifying, we're stripping down, cutting off the fat, which even though the fat's good, you know, but like we're cutting off the fat, the things that aren't for God's greater purpose for us. Because I think that has stalled, I don't know, Irene, you can fill in any time, but like that's what stalled all of our growth is that like we have prioritized other people's expectations of us, other people's dreams are like, we have, honestly, for me, what God like revealed to me like the other day, I was like nursing my kid to sleep and he was like, you care way more what people on social media think than what I think about you. And I was like my breath was, I was raised religious, but like I would say I only found my faith, my faith, not like family faith, in the last like 2.5 years. And I'm like, whoa, like I think that's alarming. So I'm gonna do that. I'm gonna start journaling. I'm gonna be quiet and let the silence, because I have a hard time with silence. Like I want to fill up the space because, you know, we all grew up in that like, oh, you hustle and grind. Like I just put my head down and I ramrodded through all the feelings of I needed to sleep. I only slept 3 hours a night. I did the thing. And I'm like, I think there's a huge happening generation of like, hey, actually go for a walk. Have you seen, side tangent, have you seen this, that girl that thinks she started the trend of silent walking?
No.
Yes. It's on.
Wait,
she's
I
like,
missed this.
She was like, oh, try this, like go out.
She's like what? A young early 20-year-old TikToker.
Yeah. And she's like, go out.
Oh, I'm not on TikTok, so I miss a lot.
We're not. We see it like months later on Instagram.
Yeah, on Instagram.
Yeah.
She's like, yeah, just try going outside and like, don't turn your phone on. Like, don't put on earbuds and just walk and see what happens. And we're like, that's just a walk, girlfriend. But like,
yeah, I know. Welcome to just being a human without the interruption of devices.
But you know what?
Yeah. But it's becoming like trendy, which is so funny. I'm like, that's how I lived in the early 90s before people were cool with their phones.
As I saw that, I was like, that's so dumb. Like, you think you started that. But then I like looked at my life. I was like, oh,
literally like I wake up in the morning, I start to make breakfast, I throw on a podcast, I turn on a YouTube video because I want to learn, like I do there, and then I like evaluate. I was like, there is not really a moment in my life. Like I edit our podcast and I have a TV show on, and I'm like, whoa, it's all just when you have for me, when I had my child, it was like a really big mirror of like, oh, I cope a lot with noise, and it's honestly your passion, like it's got me fired up. So I love it.
Yeah, good.
Do you have acne? Do you have irritable bowel? Do you have like terrible menstrual cramps? Well, all of those things could be connected to parasites. A lot of illnesses are actually connected to parasites. So that's why you should probably parasite, get those parasites out of you at least 3 to 4 times a year. And if you're hearing this, maybe you've actually never done a parasite cleanse and you need to like make up for lost times. So we have a way to help you.
Head over to rogershood.com and use the code UTSP10 for 10% off of your Parafy kit. This will help you get all those worms out of your body so you can just be a much better person.
You'll be happier. You'll be healthier. We do get a little kickback from it because we need to like keep the lights on in the studio. So
That is true.
go get them worms out your butt.
And maybe send us pictures.
Like I'm kind of just like bottled up of this has been a real season of reflection for me, and it's honestly been such it still is. It's very much a learning experience. But like I said, I'm so committed to growth. And part of that is just getting uncomfortable every single day. And it's really surprising how much you will have to fight your physiology and your perspective and your mental, like just the way that you're bent, like your very nature. I mean, it is hard because you are just, it's like, the neural pathways, the way you've always done things. I mean, they're down to like when you get in your car, what are you doing? Or what kind of music? What are you listening to? Are you talking to your kids? You're not talking to your kids. I'm telling you, I have split hairs of every single thing that I have done. And I've tried in every single area to be intentional about doing it differently because I want to see, I'm telling you, you just get in your car the next time and just see what happens. Like, what's your autopilot? Like, what do? Do you put a podcast on? Do you do music, whatever? Because you will actually realize how much you are just programmed. And I'm not saying that it's bad. Like, I'm not saying listening to music is bad or listening to podcasts or whatever, but being intentional about changing some of those rhythms sometimes, because you'll realize that the pattern has so much control over you. And sometimes it may just be a season where you've got to do it differently because you're looking for a different result in life. And if you're somebody that's like, you are just down and out and you're like depressed, then stop listening to the depressing music. Like it may make you feel better because you're like, oh my gosh, like these lyrics and the music just makes me, but it's like you are self-medicating with the very thing that is giving you the same output of the depressed, like, woe is me, like, I'm sad mentality. So you're going to have to pull yourself out of the funk and do something different and maybe put on some praise music, or maybe you just roll the windows down and you just take in the birds and the air, whatever, sit with your thoughts, and it's going to feel uncomfortable and you're not going to enjoy it. But that's okay. Like, you're not supposed to enjoy it. Like, when you lift the heavy weights, like, it is not enjoyable, but you love that you're building muscle. You love that your jeans don't fit as tight. Like, we all love the byproduct of the hard stuff, but none of us want to do the hard stuff. But that's the thing. Like, start looking at the small stuff in your life, because those are the things where it is very easy to make a change, but you've got to be thinking about it, because you will just default in the autopilot mode and you'll just do things like you've always done them. And that's where I feel like my actual physical body, like, which is crazy. Now, granted, I live in this world, like, I eat, sleep, and breathe natural health. And so I'm geeking out on stuff all the time. Like right now I'm doing, dabbling with like some different peptides, and, I monitor my body, like, probably more than I should. That's like a whole other thing too, because you can just get so overboard. But that being said, like, I understand the value of taking care of myself. And I can tell you, in the highest times of stress in my entire adult life, and I'm 38 years old and I just had a baby, a year and a half ago, I'm in better physical health than I was 10 years ago. And I really do believe it's because I've started to take control of my time and really started to hold myself accountable to some of the patterns that I have in my life. Because the minute you start to acknowledge it, it's like, whoa, this has got to go. Like, this is not it. This is not going to serve my healing. This is not going to serve my family. This is not going to serve my purpose and my calling and my mental health and my emotional health. Like, I am letting things in that are basically going to just deplete and destroy what I have. And this is way too important for me to compromise on. And so when you can start doing that, and I mean, you'll get good at it. Like any skill, the more you practice this, the better you get. And then it becomes less painful. Getting uncomfortable becomes like exciting to you. It's like, I'm okay with trying something because now I don't live under fear and shame and insecurity. Like, I don't get up all day and just battle the thoughts of I'm not good enough. They don't like me. They didn't see me. They didn't like this post. Like, no, who cares? They don't define your purpose. They don't define your value. So those are just the things. Like, I know that this is like very sermon-y, but it's like on my heart because it's something that God has been wrestling these things out. And I have to show up every day like I'm going into battle, but I'm telling you, it's worth it. Like, it is so worth it. And I'm not even on the other side yet. Like, I'm still in it, but I'm like, I have joy and I have energy and my health is growing and I'm getting better, despite the fact that if you looked at my circumstances and you looked at a lot of different things, you'd be like, dude, I would not be sleeping. I'd be really stressed out right now if I was you. But I'm not. Like, I have my moments, definitely have some moments where it's a little hairy. But most of the time, like, I'm like, this is a privilege. Like, I'm happy I'm the person that gets to step up to the plate and do this. Like, nobody's going to be more equipped than I am to handle this. You know, it's not because of my own strength and my own might. Like, it's just that I know that I have the strength of a father that can do exceedingly and abundantly more than all I could ask or imagine.
I love it. You're on fire.
I know. It's what is today? Tuesday?
Yeah, Tuesday at 10 a.m.
We're rolling on a Tuesday.
But like, also
I love it.
Like, what you're going through, what is it going to do for your lineage then? Like, the battles that you're fighting now, is it like, what purpose is it going to serve? Like, are your kids going to struggle with something later? Like, or like, are you breaking something off? Like, are you stopping it in its tracks and be like, nope, I'm going to like do the uncomfortable work so that like I can change my heritage, which that's like that's a huge motivating factor to like, your kids see you, what you're doing and the changes that you're making, the hard times that you're going through. And like, they'll someday be like, wow, my mom did the hard work and it trickled down into the family. So good work.
So good.
How do you take the time? How do you make the time? Because I know there's never going to be enough time and I'll have enough time later. You really do have to like force yourself to take it. How do you find the time and make the time with 3 little ones?
My days are pretty, they're pretty full. I get up at 4:30 every single morning, which I know is early for most people. I know. I do. I get it even on weekends. Like, what
time do you go to bed?
I do go to bed pretty early. Like, I will go to bed when the kids, honestly, my older kids, I think they're probably still up when I go to sleep because I'm like, y'all, I can't function. I'm normally in bed by like 8:30. And so I do go to bed, some nights it's like later. I try to be like asleep by 9. But there are always like, you prioritize what's important to you, right? Mm-hmm. So for me to get the things in that are important to me, like, I know I have to have a few hours, like having a baby, like she gets up early some days, like sometimes she's up at 5:15 or 5:30. So I know that if I do not get in the word before I have interaction with anybody else, like mom is not her best. And that's not going to bode well for anybody. So 4:30 it is. And I'm like, Lord, that's when we got to meet. I'm going to make some coffee and we're going to be sitting there in the dark together. And I do. So I get up and that's my, my ritual. And I have like everything laid out from, I've got like my supplements, I've got my greens powder, I've got my, mushroom coffee, like it's all dialed in. And then there's my Bible and my journal, and like I get right to it. And, honestly, like I've learned my lesson now. I don't put on makeup or do anything to get ready because, Lord knows the tears start coming and I'm like, why did I get dressed? So, that's kind of like the first thing, but I really try to steward my time well. And honestly, like I will work until about 2:30, and my team knows that come 2:30, like I got to be present for the kids. Like, cause I have two older kids that go to two different schools, are 15 minutes apart. Plus I have the baby. So the baby's with the babysitter for a few hours. I could get my work done. I go to the gym, get the big kids off to school. Like it is, when I tell you like nothing short of a full-blown production, like there is no time that's wasted. And it does kind of feel monotonous at times. I'm just like, oh my gosh. But I was just thinking about it. Like my oldest turns 12 this week. I only have 6 more years with her. Like 6 years is nothing. And she's gone. Like if I have to grind it out for 6 years, like that's incredible. I will never get that time back. And I will probably think about it that I wished I had one more day of 4:30 and lunches and driving. And, it is a grind, but I'm just like, my body can handle it right now. Couldn't handle this pace forever, but that's why we raise our kids and send them off, because we don't have to do it forever. We train them and off they go. So, I think you just have to figure out what it is in your life that's a priority. And then you start time blocking. And it's like, how do I make sure that I am checking all the boxes that are the most meaningful in my life, and also creating time for myself. Like by 4:00, I have like a little bit of a break. I lay down on the floor and this is so ridiculous. I get this yoga block. So for anybody that carries a lot of tension in their neck or in just their upper body, this is a great thing for you. I hope you love this as much as I do, but I do this every day. I did this before this podcast. I laid down right here on the floor by my desk and my yoga block is right there. But I take peppermint oil because y'all know, I told you earlier, I'm a big I'm a big essential oil gal. And so peppermint oil is like so soothing and cooling. And so I rub it behind my ears and on the back of my neck and like kind of like my traps and shoulder area. And then I take a yoga block. And for all the ladies, like if you take the yoga block and you put it kind of like long ways on the floor, and you're going to want the base of it to kind of hit where like your bra would be or sports bra would be. And you basically lay on your back on the yoga block, and it opens like a chest opener. And I can feel my back like popping when I lay down on it. And I just lay there with the essential oil on the block on the floor and just do like breath work, like putting my hands over my belly, like feeling my belly rise and fall, and just like slow my breath. I'll lay there for 10 or 15 minutes, like no music, no podcast, no nothing. And I'll just lay there. And I'm telling you, it's like the greatest midday break ever before I go into like dinner and sports, like all that stuff. It's just a great like checkpoint for me. And I feel like if you don't put those small little things in, and like I said, like I know usually around 4:00 I do that, but like this morning before the podcast, I had like 10 minutes. I was like, I'm just gonna lay on the floor for a minute. And I just laid there in the quiet, and it feels so good to my nervous system. So it's like finding things like that can bring you down from all the high energy of just output. Cause that's where we were just running like all the moms out there. Like I get it. Like we're running on, all cylinders all day. And at some point you got to pump the brakes. And unfortunately, many of us, we just get to the point where the tank's empty and we run out. So we don't even get to use the brakes because our bodies are just like, we're done. And then, it's don't talk to me, going to the closet. I'm turning out the lights and I'm just disappearing from humanity. So I don't want you to get to that place. Find some little practices. If you don't like laying on the floor, don't do it. Like find something that you like, maybe it's sitting on your porch, like whatever you need to do, just something to quiet your spirit, quiet your mind, and just realize that you do not need the idea of being productive 24/7 is such garbage. Like nobody's productive 24/7. You were not designed to be that way. And in fact, you're going to end up getting frustrated with yourself and you'll get nothing done. So I'd rather you really have great output for a few hours and figure out what it is. Like I work the best in a couple short hours and then I need like a 2-hour break. I can't do more than that because I started thinking about stuff and I started like stretch. I'm just not, my mind just can't stay committed to something beyond like 3 or 4 hours. And then I'm like, okay, time to go do something different. Change the scenery, get up and walk, go have a meal, do your phone calls, whatever you need to do. But I can't stare at a computer screen. I just know that about myself. Mm-hmm. So create the schedule that works for you, that makes you excited about doing what you're doing, even if a lot of it's monotonous and a lot of it is like changing diapers. And, I try to frame everything from the perspective of like, I won't do this all the time. I mean, it seems like, my oldest is 12 and my youngest is 1. I have one that's like preteen and I have one in diapers. Like it's a very big stretch, So I feel like sometimes I'm like, I'm going to be doing this forever, but it goes by so fast. Like my 12-year-old, I'm like, how are you 12? Like, I feel like you were Marley, the baby. I'm like, I remember seeing you, like, I feel like it was 5 seconds ago. So don't be discouraged by just the constant monotony of the task day to day, but just break it up so that it's mentally something that you can feel productive, you can feel accomplished, but it's not coming at the expense of your physical health and your mental health. Like take the breaks that you need.
We would talk to you for hours. Like I could,
we could do a part 2.
We have to do a part 2 because Irene has a client. She does hair, and so she has a client. Irene, I'm sorry, we're making you behind, but
that's all right. Go for it.
Like we could talk to you for hours. We'll have to do part 2. We know you're so busy, and we're grateful that you took the time to talk to us. And
oh my gosh, I love it.
I feel rejuvenated, and I'm excited to edit this podcast so that I can even digest and absorb it more. So. We're really grateful for you.
Yeah.
Where can people find you, connect with you, and any other call to actions that you that you want?
Oh yeah. Well, I would love it. If you want to follow along, you can find me on Instagram. I'm organic_blondie. You get a little hodgepodge of natural health tips and pets and kids and life and Bible verses and just, it's life. And so I try to expose all the different angles. But yeah, you can connect with me over there. My website is getting a complete overhaul at the end of this year. So it'll be relaunching in about a week or 2, but it's organicblondielife.com. And then also check us out over at the Ancient Health Podcast. So I had mentioned I co-host with Dr. Motley and Dr. Axe over there. And we always have great, guests and episodes coming out, and they're very geared towards natural health. So if you're looking for solutions or kind of for a different perspective of health, that's kind of that's where I live, and making content. So yeah. And then the Health Institute on Instagram too has great content. So you can go check that out.
We will link everything in the description, but we do send your podcast. We've had people message us and say we need help with this, or your episode on coffee enemas. I've sent to 100 people. Honestly, my gosh. They're talk to me about coffee enemas. I don't need to. Here's this podcast. Go listen to this podcast about it. It's really helpful. Oh my gosh. So it's a great resource. We send it to people frequently. So we thank you for doing that work and putting it out there and making it where we can tangibly do something. But
yes,
we thank you for being here, and we'll have to have you back for a part 2.
Thanks for being with us today. Follow us on Instagram at @underthesun_podcast. We'd love to meet you.
Please help us out by subscribing on YouTube and leaving a review on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. We'll see you next time. Please remember this information is made available to you for informational and educational purposes only. It is in no way a substitute for medical advice.